Hey guys, this is Mikro here. I wanted to make a build on Vigor, how it works, and how it could be best utilized to kind of eliminate DPS that is happening to you within OPR, or how you could build your build to maximize the damage of Vigor to be able to deal more damage within OPR, 3v3, or open world. I wouldn't say this is a good build for war in particular, because most dot damage is just going to be instantly healed up, but within OPR 3v3 and open world, where cleanse pots are not a thing, these dot-based builds can be very, very effective, and they are very interesting to kind of talk about. This idea also kind of translates over to how invigorated works, which will also be interesting to kind of talk about here at the end as an aside. First off, this video is heavily inspired by a baboon banana who made a recent video on this, who talked about this on stream with Eldorian, and it's a very cool idea to just reduce the amount of damage that you're taking from these dot-based builds, particularly within OPR or within 3v3. They are very, very popular and are very, very oppressive because they do a good amount of damage over time. Now, for the sake of this example, we're going to be looking at Keenly Jagged, because Keenly Jagged will allow you to be or can be used for any weapon and has a very easy kind of basic math to understand for this, where this concept could be applied to basically every other dot effect, like poison shot, for example, or smolder stacks that happen from a fire staff. So Keenly Jagged inflicts a bleed on a critical hit and does 10% weapon damage per second for 6 seconds. So if you were to take 1 damage originally, you would take 1.6 times the amount of damage with Keenly Jagged, which effectively makes it the best DPS perk in the game, given a situation that no one is being healed. Unfortunately, people are being healed over time, where this x-axis here is the seconds, and this y-axis here is damage, where we're going to be starting at 1 for the most of these examples, or something that's a little bit offset so you can see how these kind of move relative to each other. So we're going to be taking 1 damage originally, and then after 6 seconds we'll be dealing a 1.6 times the amount of damage, which is effective, but there are some other things that you probably need to take in consideration if you're building one of these builds. So if you were to do the idealistic baboon banana setup, which watch that video if you have not seen it, you are effectively going to be shorting this duration to basically nothing, and you are going to be taking a 1.115% damage versus taking the original 1.6 times damage. So you're reducing the DPS that is coming into you very significantly. You are still taking a decent amount of DPS just from that initial hit, but those bleeds are effectively going to be doing nothing to you, and you will be able to live a lot longer because of that. The problem is with this setup is there are factors that you cannot control, and with those factors that the other out or with your enemies could build towards, you will effectively not get any value out of this vigor-based setup. This vigor-based setup's value could be effectively reduced to null by running at either attributes or weapon perks that will extend the duration of bleeds. The reason why is these extensions are not going to be affected by these actual damage reduction or these dot reduction based effects, and because of that interaction where they are not affected, it effectively makes it so those dot based effects are just not super valuable within within the kind of setting of OPR or within 3v3. That being said, if your enemies do not build towards these, it will not be super effective. So here is an example of the best case situation for a building from a dot-based build. So this is right here is an attribute bonus from 150 dex. 150 dex will extend the duration of dot-based damage by 15%. You could also get to 250 int, and this will also extend the duration of dot-based damage effects by 30%. So combined, that is 45%. And then on top of that, you could use something like Bloodletting, which will extend the duration of bleeds by 33%. And on top of that, you could use the Butcher, which will also extend the duration of bleeds by 33%. Put all these together, and you're going to be dealing about double the damage that you were originally doing, and you're going to be doing a significant amount more damage than the original graph I showed here. So you can't see the original graph anymore, but we knew that it was at 1.6 damage by the end of it, right? Now you're going to be doing 2.26 damage, so you're going to be doing over double your original damage just with those bleed based effects over time with this kind of max bleed build setup. Now, This is in kind of an ideal situation where no one's running any damage mitigation, and I want to go into the situation where you are kind of looking at both of these compared next to each other. If you were to put them side by side, who wins out? And it turns out barely to be the bleed based setup. Now, the duration based setup goes from basically hard countering this build to doing a decent amount of mitigation. It is cutting off nearly one half of the bleed damage that you're going to be taking, but you're still taking a significant amount of bleed damage if you're actually going to go for one of these builds. The kind of lesson for this video is you want to build to your strengths. You don't want to kind of half-ass, for the lack of a better word, a build, or you will just get hard countered by something that can be built just to negate that build's value overall within New World. So if you are going to be building towards one of these bleed-based effects, it makes sense to try to maximize the amount of these dot-based extensions that you could take. Maybe that means running poison on your ring. Maybe that means running blood running on your ring. Or if you're doing a bleed-based setup, maybe even consider the butcher because it has a good bleed that's attached to it and will extend the duration of bleeds altogether. And that effectively will make these dots just tick for so much longer. Now, realistically, I don't think everyone's going to be willing to go for those kind of bleed-based damage ring or the artifact. And in that case, Vigor still does a lot of work here. It's going to be reducing the original damage by half if you are just going for that 150 dex and that 250 int setup. So overall, it's kind of a plus and minus to this build. It's very interesting, but I think the Vigor build is safe to say this is a good build for OPR or for 3v3. But if you were to move to larger scale, I would not say these perks would generally get value because that damage based over time will effectively just be healed up over time and will not retain the value that it once had. That being said, if you guys learned anything in this video, please consider leaving a like or subscribing. And this logic will apply to how uh, Invigorated works. And the thing that will counter Invigorated is infected on the ring. So much like where you can counter these bleed-based effects, this concept could be applied to countering Invigorated as well, which is a perk that I like to run personally. And I will see you guys in the next video.